Okay, so we're starting recording. So welcome everybody to this morning's event. Very nice to see so many people. This is Educating for Zero Carbon, organised by Transition Chesterfield, Chesterfield Climate Alliance, Derby Climate Coalition and Derbyshire Climate Coalition. And very nice to see you all this morning. I'm very excited about the lineup of speakers today. We've got 4 amazing, inspiring women and young women who are going to talk to us today about how we can embed sort of climate education, how we can teach ourselves and others about climate education and inspire, and empower people to act. So we are recording this session. There will be a write-up of the session and recording available afterwards. We're going to have 4 speakers and then we're going to have the question and answer session at the end. If you want to ask a question, can I just ask you to type it in the chat? Just put a Q and then your question. And then when we get to the questions, I'll go through those and ask people to voice their questions, and then the speakers can answer them. So we'll get started, and we're going to go sort of chronologically in terms of education. So we'll start with nursery, infants, go through secondary, tertiary, and then end with adults. So our first speaker today is Fiona Cowan, who is head of Bolsover Infants and Nursery School. And this is an award-winning school, which is a real catalyst for change in their community. It's got a climate campaign, One World, No Second Chance. And all the teachers are accredited climate teachers. They've developed their own climate curriculum using knowledge learnt from the UN. And they've had guidance and support from a non-profit company called Harwood Education. And so Fiona has worked alongside Harwood Education, and she's trained to be the first teacher and head teacher in Derbyshire and only the second head teacher in the UK to become a certified climate teacher. She was invited to speak at COP25 together with others from the Educate Global programme to share their experience, and she's also featured on BBC's Woman's Hour. So it's a real pleasure to have Fiona here today. So Fiona, would you like to start sharing your screen and present? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just clicking away, changing everything so you can see my screen. So I'm hoping that things are changing. Can somebody nod if you can see my screen and you can hear me? Brilliant, thank you. So good morning, everyone. So I believe we've been asked to come and speak about education and educating, for me in particular, young children. Obviously at our school, we teach infant and nursery children, but the process we've been through is suitable for primaries and secondaries. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our experience over the last few years. So a brief history of the school. About 5 or 6 years ago, we entered into the International School Award with the British Council, and over a number of years we've entered and completed a number of projects around the themes that are there in identity and belonging, rights and responsibilities, and one of those was state sustainability, and those projects have been put into place and have continued over the years. We've also done such projects as forest schools. We do a lot of work with science outdoors. We've got a huge parent plan which involves parents being involved in school and community work, and we've got a number of very successful connections with local businesses, and that's kind of our history. But we also had established what we used to call curriculum immersion weeks, where we would spend the whole week looking at particular topics, and climate had been one of those topics a number of times. We've got particularly high standards in school, and we are fairly successful as an establishment, but we've done a lot of work around metacognition and children's thinking skills, particularly for young children. We have a huge wellbeing plan, which has obviously been very successful over the last year and COVID, etc. However, on our journey in sort of 2018, 17-18, we met a lady called Melanie Harwood. She's the director of Harwood Education, which, as Lisa says, is a not-for-profit organisation which runs Educate Global. And they were setting up Educate Global and asked us to take part in a handwriting project, which is how we met them, where our children wrote postcards to send to COP24, and they were open to the elements on the top of the Alps, as a promotion for COP24. So we took on that project, and as part of that, the children made a climate commitment. And as we made that, it felt sensible to continue that work throughout the year. And so our theme really for that year became sort of climate work. And what we noticed as a result of that was one of the things we were struggling with was our own knowledge. And so working alongside Educate Global, we entered into a sort of training package with our staff. So I completed the training first, and then my staff came on board over the year. And we completed 5 UN climate change courses that are out there in the public domain for anybody to undertake. So we did those. We found that they were very adult-led. The information was written and is there for adults. But what it allowed us to do was to kind of engage with it ourselves and engage with the topic. So by using the staff training, and it allowed us to develop an ethos as a school around what we felt as adults around the topic. So then what we worked on was establishing some kind of agreement with ourselves around what we felt climate education involved, and what does it mean to us. And so we worked on what we felt was the definition of climate change, what things it needed to include as an educator, particularly for our very young children, but just for children in general. We talked about climate literacy, global warming, environmental science, harmonizing with nature, which for us with our very young children was a really important sort of topic. Global citizenship, which we touched on before, as I say. Conflict resolution was one of the big issues that we were looking at, and the idea of creating a peaceful planet. Now, some of these things were already in our curriculum, the emotional literacy in particular and well-being, we'd done a lot of work around. The higher order thinking skills, as I say, we'd entered into. Eco-anxiety was one of the things we were starting to kind of identify, obviously through all children, but for very young children we'd had some conversations. So they were all in our mind as we were starting to talk about these subjects. But what was very important for us was what are we expected to teach? What are we allowed to teach? What do we need to teach? And, you know, it is a complex issue. It generally only is taught in Key Stage 3 and 4. For early years, Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, some of the topics sit within our curriculum. And so as you start to pull out the science, the geography, the RE, the PSHE from these topics, you can start to see that we already have permission to teach this climate literacy within our education, but you have to adapt what you're delivering. So we were very clear, we wanted to cover, you know, global citizenship, we wanted to look at environmental science, climate literacy, in order to teach our children the importance of this topic, to engage them in this topic from a very young age, to support the children in working with the community and their parents. And we felt the best way to do that was to involve it in our curriculum every day and to wrap it up in what we were doing rather than it being special set aside weeks. So we went through looking at permissions from Ofsted, and we found that, you know, there is that sentence in there that says we have the autonomy to choose a curriculum that we think is appropriate to our children and our school. We looked at the curriculum, and even down to early years, we could see there were objectives in there that allowed us to look at growth and change over time and the natural environment. And we looked at Key Stage 1 science and geography, and we could see that it was all, the permissions were all there for us to do these things. As I say, we did make sure that this could continue through into our junior school and beyond. So we always looked at Key Stage 2 as well, and, you know, the permissions are there. We were very aware as well, because we've been working with the international schools and the British Council, that global citizenship was something, particularly for our children in Bolsover, was really important. Our children, for some of our children, the world is very small, particularly when they're very young, and especially so as we've gone through the, you know, global sort of pandemic, etc. And it was important to us, that we ensured that our children became global citizens, and it became, you know, part of what they understand and what they do. So we set about looking at our curriculum. Obviously, inspectors are looking at what is the intent of our curriculum, how we're going to implement it, and what will be the impact. And we had those conversations as a school and as a staff, all alongside delivering some of these things and trialing some of the projects. So we worked on our curriculum. We wanted it to be fun, creative, play-based, engaging, and particularly age appropriate, because what you find out in the world is a lot of this stuff, a lot of the information is too hard for the children to understand. So we were particularly wanting to ensure that we took this topic right down to its very basics, so our children could understand and could process what we were talking about. So we worked really hard on that, and we have created our curriculum, and we're actually reviewing it now in light of COVID, but we are still including all of the climate change sort of work. But over the last few years, including the COVID year, we've worked really hard on ensuring children have had an opportunity to develop their knowledge within the curriculum and beyond. And we've done quite a lot of work. Prior to COVID, we were really kind of steaming ahead with community links and business links, and ensuring the knowledge that we create in school goes beyond the school gates, and so that we were engaging the community and parents, we were engaging local businesses, particularly Smurfit Kappa have been really supportive. As a very green company already, they've worked really close with us alongside developing some of the issues, particularly around children engaging in the environment. They've really supported us with that. Alongside Educate Global, who have supported us on this journey. We've made sure that we include the children in all these plans, and that we work with whoever is available really to support what we are doing. So some of the work we've done, obviously all of our staff have been trained and they've got a really good knowledge around climate literacy, and now how we teach that to children. We use a bear called Mr. Bewilder. He's part of our learning, our metacognition work. Mr. Bewilder has a cousin who's called Captain Polo. Captain Polo sails around the world dealing with climate change issues. So we've had a visit from Captain Polo. We kicked off the work with children and with dinosaurs, and you can see the dinosaur came to visit. He talked about how dinosaurs became extinct because they couldn't adapt and change to their environment. And we use that as the starting point and the springboard to whatever came next. You can see in there, probably can't because it's quite small, but we talked about play-based activities, so children could engage and we could encourage vocabulary and learning. We talked about the definitions. We talked about how children can talk about it. There's Mr. Bewilder and Polo. We talked about how planting trees could help. That's the postcard. We did artwork. We did play. So as you can see, over the last few years, we've done a number of different activities. What we're trying to do is to communicate that out to parents. So the activities always were followed up with articles in our school newsletter or Facebook or etc., trying to get this information out to the community and beyond really. So we've just talked about Polo. He kind of is our vehicle for delivering. We learn how his icebergs are melting, so he can't catch his fish, so he had to go beyond where he lived, and then the experiences that he's had and the people he's met on the way. And then obviously COVID hit. So we have continued this journey through COVID. We've done the best we can where we can. We've done quite a bit of work in lockdown with children at home and with parents because it was an ideal opportunity. We've also done work in school as well and tried to use our school grounds, tried to get children out into nature as best we can. We continue to do all of the special days that come, World Earth Day, all of those types of things. And we try and keep the children involved and keep it fun and play-based. We are always very understanding of our community and our very young audience. We're trying to empower children and create hope and empathy, etc. We're as factual as possible, but what we don't want to do is to scare the children and create, issues around anxiety. So we're always open and honest. We try to connect with the adults and give them a voice in terms of supporting the young children. We create an open door culture. We use children's imagination for them to kind of respond to the change and what they think they can do. And actually our children are extremely positive about the things that they can do in order to make a change to aim for carbon zero. But really the biggest thing as a school we do is we plan, do, review, and we're always asking what's next for us, what impact have we had so far with parents and children and the community, and where can we go next, how can we support the things that are happening in the community, the locality, nationally and globally, and what impact are we looking for, how will we do this, what will we do, and what will we achieve. We don't know what the answers are, but what we do know is education makes a massive difference, particularly for children who are on the beginnings of their educational journey. And we feel that by engaging these children in this topic very young, you will create the climate activists of the future, really. These children are going to be town planners, these children may be politicians, they can work in a whole host of industries. Hopefully with this in mind, we have engaged our children in this topic from a very, very young age. We know that children influence parents and the community, and we've seen that as part of the work we've done. We've continued to make it fun for the children and engaging. That's been really important for us. And we consider this sort of climate topic in everything we do. So there's been a huge debate on it. We've got a closed Facebook group, a huge debate about whether we have leavers sweaters this year and hoodies for the children. There's been a massive debate by parents as to whether we're producing clothing that's not needed, and the parents have debated it out amongst themselves, because everything we do includes this topic, and we try as best we can to involve the community, parents, but specifically the very young children in that journey. So that's a real whistle-stop tour, really, of where we've been. I'm very conscious I've overrun a little bit, but that's good for me, because I can talk about this subject forever, as can my teachers, but particularly can our children. Thank you. You're on mute, Lisa.
Sorry, Fiona, thank you so much. That was absolutely amazing. I'm sorry we've only given you 10 minutes, because you could, I'd quite happily listen to you for an hour. What an absolutely pioneering, exemplar, school you are, and the way you've managed to embed it in the curriculum, make it very child-centered, and obviously, it's obviously having its impact on the wider community. You can just tell. So we'll come back to the questions on discussion later, but thank you very much, Fiona, and
no problem, thank you.
Brilliant what's happening in Bolsover. I feel very pleased, and proud actually that something like that is happening in Derbyshire. So we're now going to go a bit of a leap from infants to secondary education, and obviously it's not just teachers, students have a lot of agency as well, can take a lot of action. And really thrilled to have Anna Marshall here today, who's a secondary school student at St Mary's High School in Chesterfield. Eleanor can't be with us today because she's got Duke of Edinburgh, so good luck with the mud in the Peak District with that then. But Anna, she's been involved in her school green team, she's attended school strikes, and is very keen on promoting the environment in the school. And I think it's brilliant what you're doing. So Anna, would you like to unmute and give us a little bit more information about how secondary school students can educate others?
Well, hello. So yes, my name is Anna, and I'm a student at St Mary's High School. So I'm going to speak about my perspective as a student on the climate crisis and our response to it. So everyone agrees that education is a vital element of the response to the climate crisis. I thought that it might be useful to give you an insight into how I feel I have been educated on the climate emergency. So firstly, I think it is important for you to know that my generation knows about the climate crisis. Many people assume that those young people who don't attempt to respond to the climate crisis don't know about the climate crisis. And that's blatantly not true. We know and understand the climate crisis perhaps better than older generations because we've grown up with the science, with being told about it, being worried about it, and being taught what we can do to help. The climate crisis is on the news and in discussions at school. There is certainly the problem with the curriculum. I remember particularly being taught to weigh up the pros and cons of different energy sources. A con for wind turbines being that they're an eyesore and CO2 emissions being just one small factor among many for GCSE physics. There is room for improvement in the curriculum. However, we are taught about the environmental impact we have on the planet. I've been made aware in geography, RS, English, and chemistry, to name but a few subjects. Again, it's on the news. We speak about it at school, and we even have speakers coming in to talk about climate change. We can't claim ignorance. So, what is it that could possibly be lacking from our education that can stop my generation engaging with the climate emergency? There's obviously something crucial, and in my experience, it is the detachment of the education we receive from real life. I am taught that single-use plastic is bad in class, that when it finally breaks down after hundreds of years, it leaks damaging chemicals into the surroundings. The next minute, I'm in the dining room and all my friends are having plastic packaged food. Maybe it's the only option if I want a glass of water to buy a plastic bottle. I'm told mass-produced meat is bad for the environment, and yet it is served day in and day out. I'm told that I shouldn't buy things I don't need or won't use, and yet every day the real world advertises a new type of phone or gadget that's slightly different to the last. It is as if what we are taught in the classroom about climate change doesn't actually matter. It's not relevant in real life. There is no holistic education. There's only so much anyone can be taught in the classroom, and there's neither a sustained message for change to help the environment, nor a consistent message. I suppose it's the same reason why so many adults dismiss climate change. It's easy to do what everyone else does, and it feels safe. The example we are set is one that doesn't change. Why should we have to be the ones to change, and why shouldn't we trust the adults? Surely they know more than us about the world. Young people are simply not the solution. We can't vote, we can't work, we don't have the same amount of independence. We are completely reliant on adults. There are a lot of strong emotions about climate change for young people. We feel scared, anxious, hopeless, frustrated. Equally, as much as we are taught to care, we are encouraged to dismiss climate change. There are more important things, such as exams, getting a job, and achieving that magical thing, success. If anything, the current education system teaches us to be selfish and short-sighted. It's harder to work for the environment than not, from my experience. There's always the underlying fear for schools that climate activism is party political, which of course it's not. There's also the opposition from big companies such as school food caterers, which have been taking advantage of the lack of funding in state schools. They consistently put profit above the environment. Is this what it is to be successful? And why is this allowed in an educational setting? They have just as much impact as anything a teacher can say in the classroom about climate change. Environmental messaging is just nowhere to be seen. I think perhaps the best thing about my generation is that we're not actually afraid of change. We want to do things. We're open to new ideas, and this is what causes the frustration. We need the help, but for most people, support for environmental action is not there in school, or at least not visibly there. Schools can't be expected to change things or be relied on as the only place of environmental education. That has never been the case. Everyone knows education extends beyond the classroom. If environmental messaging stops after a single lesson, it has no impact. I come from the background of a Catholic school, and I think it is important to share the fantastic news that very recently the bishops of England and Wales have put a letter out to all Catholic schools. I'd just like to read part of it to demonstrate the call to climate activism that I believe has the power to change hearts, if only it is made present and relevant in real life for young people. So here's just a little quote from it. There must be a new global understanding of our world, where nations recognise our common responsibility for the dignity of all people and their rights to sustainable livelihoods and freedoms. But we cannot leave the healing of our common home and the well-being and care of our brothers and sisters merely to businesses and political leaders. Our own local concern and action is necessary and has far-reaching consequences. We all have a part to play, each and every one of us, in the routines, choices, and decisions of our everyday lives and our aspirations for the future. This seems more like the success I want to aim for.
Well, bravo. Thank you, Anna. That was just absolutely brilliant. I'm just blown away by that. I'm quite emotional. So you're absolutely right. You know, it shouldn't be left to schools. It shouldn't be left to young people to deal with this. It's up to all of us. So sorry, I've just got to take a minute. So we'll come on to our next speaker now. Sorry, people. So we'll move on to university education now. Dr. Sian Davies-Vollum is head of the School of the Built and Natural Environment and interim head of the Environmental Sustainability Research Centre at the University of Derby. So Sian's a geoscientist with a broad experience in sustainability teaching and research. She's got degrees in geology and environmental technology and a doctorate from University of Oxford, focused on climate and environmental recovery to the end of the Cretaceous extinction event. So she's got a postdoc from Smithsonian Institution. She spent time in the UK and the US as an academic and has tried to integrate her research with her teaching. She's now the Executive Secretary of Universities Geoscience UK and is chairing a review of a benchmark statement underpinning environmental science degrees in the UK. And her current research is on the sustainability of coastal environments and communities with an emphasis on the global south. So Sian, would you like to start sharing your screen? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Hopefully everybody can see that. Yes? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. Having listened to Fiona and Anna, I feel very humbled and inspired at the same time. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the university sector and in general how we are embedding educating for zero carbon and sustainability. I'll talk a little bit about a couple of frameworks that are being used, and then I'll talk specifically about the University of Derby. So if we're looking at carbon literacy and achieving net zero carbon, we really need to consider all of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We can't just look at Goal 13, climate action, in isolation, because there's an interconnectedness and interdependency between all of these. We look closely, all of them have a bearing at achieving carbon literacy and achieving net zero carbon. Infrastructure, renewable energy, sustainable cities, they're all important. So what I'm going to be really talking about is very broadly around sustainability and the Sustainable Development Goals, with an understanding that they are critical and essential and all a part of achieving net zero carbon. So there are two frameworks that we're using in the higher education sector to embed sustainability and carbon literacy across degree subjects. The first is the UN Education for Sustainable Development. Now, this provides guidance on how to use education to achieve the SDGs. It's a toolkit, if you like, of topics and activities to support each of those SDGs. And that toolkit includes learning objectives around the cognitive, socio-emotional and behavioural aspects, and suggested topics, learning approaches and methodologies. So, for example, the section on climate action, SDG 13, suggests that pupils might perform a role play to estimate and feel the impact of climate change related phenomena from different perspectives. And that just gives you an example of the level of detail that this goes into. And obviously it's been developed from the UN General Assembly adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that occurred in 2015, and the development of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, this just isn't for higher education. It can be utilised across the education sector, from primary schools, infant schools, primary schools, right through to adult education. But it is something that's being used in universities to embed the Sustainable Development Goals throughout curriculum, and not just those degrees that are obviously sort of more environmental. If we look at the next framework, this is specific to universities. So the Quality Assurance Agency essentially is the agency in the UK that governs the quality, or assures the quality of degrees at university level. And it's recently produced or updated its guidance on education for sustainable development. So that was launched at the end of March. So this is specifically for universities and how to design their curricula so that sustainable development and the Sustainable Development Goals are embedded across that curricula. What's important is that it's not just a standalone document, but it's now being incorporated into what we call the benchmark statements. So these are the statements that that set out what is expected within a degree, what students are expected to learn and understand, and their competencies within a degree subject area. So this Education for Sustainable Development guidance is now being incorporated into those benchmark statements on everything from art through to business, through to all the science subjects. And as Lisa noted, I'm involved in the environmental science and earth science benchmark statement revision that's incorporating this guidance. And it's not just come from top down. I put a quote at the bottom there, and the bit that I want to pick out, and it's a quote that comes from the guidance. So there's evidence that students expect sustainable development to be incorporated into their institutional practices and curricula. So at the last National Union of Students Skills Survey, over 80% of students wanted to see sustainable development actively incorporated and promoted across all courses, so all degree subject areas. And I think that really chimes with what Anna had to say to us in the previous talk that we heard. So those are the two sort of frameworks that universities are using to ensure that sustainable development and climate literacy is embedded in their degrees. What's important with this UK framework, the QAA framework, is it also sets out key competencies that students then need to go out into the workplace, so into their areas of employment once they've graduated, so that they can take what they've learned into the broader environment and take what they've learned into their career. I'd like to tell you now a little bit about.
I can't even get the slides.
I'm hearing another voice here.
Just wait till I get BT next week.
Has it just come like that?
I think somebody's got their
Started all right.
microphone on.
I'll switch the tablet off and see if that's something.
I don't think it will, love. Thank you.
Give me a shout if it is.
Can I continue? I just heard a whole other conversation there, and I thought maybe it would be
Sorry, Sean. I think yes. Please, can everybody make sure they're muted? Thank you.
That's okay. I just thought that I didn't want it to confuse everyone by trying to talk over. Okay, so let's give me a little pause. I'm going to talk to you about University of Derby and what we're doing around education for sustainable development. So we have a Centre for Excellence in Learning and Teaching, and a key academic that sits in that centre that supports academic teams to make ESD a part of all curricula. So there are resources for academics, there's supportive events and organised seminars and talks so that we can really embed this throughout our curricula. And I am talking from a kind of academic point of view, but there's also our Union of Students has a similar approach around students and student activities. We participated in the Global Goals Teaching, which is essentially a UK initiative to show how different classes, different degrees are teaching around the SDGs. We just had our Global Challenges Week, which highlights teaching and research related to sustainable development. And something to note that just as from a personal perspective, I've just got funding to develop and deliver a virtual sustainability workshop for students that brings students from Ghana together with students from the University of Derby to discuss what sustainability and the sustainable development goals means from their two different perspectives, which is, I think, is very important to have that cross-cultural awareness of climate literacy and sustainability. We are looking to embed the Sustainable Development Goals across our degrees, and that just doesn't mean just badging, but really considering what we are delivering within those degrees. And we have a new degree starting in September around specifically environmental sustainability. So this is the sort of flagship or the initial degree that we will be using to really wrap around or have that ESD UN framework sort of wrapped around the degree. And so 3 areas that I want to highlight here. Module content is mapped against the Sustainable Development Goals. These are some of the modules that are within the degree that students will be learning about. Note that climate change is up there, and that's focused really around mitigation and adaptation. Really importantly, this degree prepares graduates for careers in the green economy. So we have modules that look at corporate social responsibility, business and sustainability, environmental legislation, and we have embedded within the degree that industrial and that sector experience around live briefs, so working with industry, working with employers on real problems that they're working on, and then there are industrial placements and projects that students can participate in. And really the underpinning tenets here that this is an interdisciplinary approach. You have to look across different subject areas, across disciplines, to be able to address climate literacy, address achieving net zero carbon. The curriculum has to be solution focused. You know, we need to be looking at how we can make a difference. And it aligns to the key national, international policy and agreements. And it's informed by the research that we conduct at the university through the Environmental Sustainability Research Centre. And we have academics that are working on everything from climate change to biodiversity to sustainable transport and infrastructure. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I have got a slide at the end that just talks about, just has some of the websites referenced, and I'll share those with Lisa so that she can distribute them afterwards. So thank you for your time, and yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you
I'll stop sharing my screen.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Sian. That was great. And I'll put all those website links in the write-up. So, you know, don't worry about scribbling them down now. So very interesting that, you know, you mentioned students expecting, you know, sustainability to be integrated into the curriculum, which kind of leads on to our next speaker, really, because although this is about education and we assume it's all about children, actually the people we really, really need to educate are adults. So very delighted to have Dr. Rina Jones with us, and Rina is the manager for the Local Authority Energy Partnership, which is all the local authorities in Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, Derby and Nottingham, hosted by Derbyshire County Council. And she works with all 19 local authorities to help tackle the interconnected issues of climate change, domestic energy efficiency, housing retrofit and fuel poverty. And she was so impressed by a carbon literacy training course she attended 2 years ago. She developed and ran her own for her council network. And I've been on a very short version of her carbon literacy training, and it was excellent. And Rina has a background in geoscience facilitation and training. So we've got the privilege of having 2 geoscience scientists with us today. So and Margaret's going to do the slides for you. So Margaret, are you there? Right, brilliant. So Rina, do you want to start then? Thank you. Are you there, Rina? lost Rina? Rina, do you want to unmute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, brilliant.
Brilliant. So sorry about that. Classic mistake. Yes, that's the last slide. Actually, could I have the first slide? And I'll start from there. So that one you've got there's the last one. Is that possible? I think Margaret's on mute as well.
Sorry, yeah, I'm just trying to work it out.
Well, I'll start chatting anyway while you go back, while you get to the slide. Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks for introducing me. Yes, I do work with all 19 local authorities across Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. So all the district councils, the county councils, and the 2 city councils, which is really excellent. I've got a huge network of officers that I work with. So and in 2019, all of these councils either declared a climate emergency or made a similar commitment to reach net zero carbon. And they all set different target dates for that, but most of them were at least aiming for the national target of 2050. But that was really quite an achievement for this area. And one of my roles was to encourage them all to engage with that agenda and to actually do that. And so I was really thrilled when that happened. But then the question is then, well, now what? It's fantastic making that commitment, but it's a complicated subject. There's an awful lot to do, and it's not necessarily clear what path needs to be taken. So I've been involved in the last couple of years since those declarations and commitments were made, supporting and encouraging councils to sort of educate their staff and managers and elected members in the whole area of climate change. So those declarations that were made referred both to the council's own operations, which is difficult enough in itself to get to net zero, but also most of them also declared or made a commitment around reducing the carbon emissions in their geographical area as well, which is a lot more difficult because councils have less control over things outside their own operations. So it's a really fantastic commitment to make, but rather a difficult something to actually pull off in practice. So 2 years ago, I started looking for any educational material aimed at adults and obviously applying it in a local government context. But what I'm going to be talking about could be applied in any workplace, in fact, any community context at all. It's just that I'm in a local government environment. So I very quickly discovered the Carbon Literacy Project, which is a large-scale education programme for adults based in Manchester. And it was launched in 2012 and has grown steadily since then. My sense is now, 9 years later, it's just about to break through and become a really mainstream, very exciting proposition. So I'm pleased to have been involved in the last couple of years, and I can see it's going to really take off very soon. So in terms of the word carbon literacy, it was kind of coined, if you like, by the Carbon Literacy Project, and the phrase is used kind of without capitals in the literature, in the scientific literature, quite often casually, but when it's got capital letters, it's kind of been almost branded or used exclusively by the Carbon Literacy Project. So when you see that, you know that that's what they're talking about. So what is carbon literacy? Can I have the next slide, please? And can you click 4 more times once the slides come up, and then we'll have all the text. Thank you. That's great. So it's essentially relevant climate change learning for everybody. So every adult and young people too would find this useful, relevant and interesting. And there's different ways of explaining it, but essentially it is a whole day's learning, a whole day's worth of learning about climate change and mankind's impacts on the climate and things that need to be done to in the way we live to respond to climate change and to mitigate against it. So you could describe it in a range of different ways, but one of the most important things is that it is a whole day of learning. And I was on a webinar the other day about it. There's a launching Carbon Literacy Project, launching a toolkit for local government right now, and they were emphasising how the research they've done shows that it's the whole day of learning that's important. If you have less than that, their research shows the commitments people make and the actions they commit to take as a result are not powerful, and they don't necessarily get carried through. So that concept of a whole day of learning sounds like a lot, but it's there's a reason for it, and it has a very important purpose. So let's just look at that in a little bit more detail. If I could have the next slide, please, and if you could click 3 more times when that's on, thank you. So the material in the course, or in the courses, because the way it's generated is that there's a whole range of courses for different audiences that have the same basic components to them. What they all have to cover, and what they all do cover, is climate change, so a bit about the science, carbon footprints, understanding the kind of the consequences of different areas of life and what we do, what we have, how people can do their bit, whatever context they're in, whether they're in a senior position or a more junior position in an organisation or in the community, and why this whole topic is relevant to everybody and to everyone that everyone's working with. The Carbon Literacy Project is very unique and was recognised by the UN in COP21 in Paris. And it was awarded a TAP 100 award, of which there's only 100 programmes that have been awarded that across the world. And that stands for transformative action. So it's held in very high regard. And as I said, it's been growing in importance and popularity since then. So let's just look at what's actually happening in that programme. So could I have the next slide, please? You only need to click once for this one. Thank you. So far, and this is increasing exponentially as I speak, really, 18,000 UK citizens and citizens in other parts of the world have been certified as carbon literate, having finished the course. And the course has been, or one of the courses has been taught in nearly 1,500 organisations, most of them in the UK. And there's 203 different courses designed, but all based on the same basic core principles. As you can see, other notes from that infographic, 36,000 actions have been pledged. And that's because towards the end of the course, every participant is asked to make 2 commitments, 2 action commitments, 2 pledges. One that they can carry out individually in their working life, and the other one that they can carry out as a group or as a number of people together, working together in their workplace. It's mainly targeted around around workplaces, but also could be in communities. So to qualify, to be certified, you have to make 2 strong commitments. I might say a bit more about that later on. And really importantly, as a result of the training and the research, the follow-up research has been done, those commitments are leading to between 5 and 15% carbon savings per person, which is, might not sound like a lot, but if you think about how much an individual person may emit, that's quite a big chunk as a result of one day's training that can be measured. So let's just have a little look at a little bit of the content, just a few examples of things in the content. Some of this is from the course I've designed, some of it from a more generic course that's been designed for local government. So I'm just going to show you a few slides. It needs to be visual, interactive, engaging, and fun to last a day and to be aimed to be relevant and interesting to all kinds of different people. So there's a big emphasis on the kind of the visual side of things. So let's look at the first slide. I'm sure some of you, sorry, the next slide. I'm sure some of you will have seen this graphic. I absolutely adore this. This is one I chose. I know some of you will have seen it before. To me, it's a fantastic example of how art and science come together. Next slide, please. What it actually is a visual representation in colour of annual global temperatures from 1850 to 2017, showing how the temperature of the Earth has increased substantially very recently and how it's kind of accelerating. So that's a different way of showing the hockey stick graph or any other carbon graph you'd like to show. So we try and show things in a way that sort of startles and inspires people and gives them something to remember. It's all about having an impact on people so that they make a strong commitment to do something about the situation. So next slide, please. So then we look at some of the impacts that we're already feeling, ideally locally, but also internationally. That's the railway line from Derby to Matlock, flooded 2019. We need to keep the material very current because people need to know that it's happening now. This isn't something stale and old. It's happening all the time. So we'll show pictures of fires in California or Australia, and any other climate change impacts that we've recently experienced. nationally or globally. So next slide, please. Then there'll be an emphasis on international agreements, policy, and decisions about the future. Where are we going? What do we want to achieve? What will happen if we don't act quickly and now? So this is a new infographic that's just recently been published by the Carbon Literacy Project, which is, to me, a really stark point. It's here we are, which way are we going to go? And it is totally down to us. A story of two possible futures. So at that point in the course, people are usually a little bit shaken and also hopefully inspired. So then it's very important to start looking at solutions and looking at the positives and things that can really make a difference that we can all do. So next slide, please. So there's 6 more clicks for this one, please. So we look at the solutions and, really importantly, what we call the co-benefits, which are the other benefits from taking positive climate action. So switching on the obvious things, switching to electric transport means air pollution's improved. Switching to highly insulated homes means our heating drops, people are much healthier, more comfortable. Eating less animal products means that we are usually healthier. We've got more space to rewild. There's so many positive ways on top of the climate actions of inspiring people that if we do those things, we have so many other benefits as well, both socially and environmentally. So let's look at the next slide. That's me just going through some of the slides for you in a typical course. So as I said before, to become carbon literate, you have to make 2 pledges, significant pledges at the end of the course. And they really importantly, they must be significant, not just significant to you in that you want to do them, but significant with respect to your position in the organisation. So if you're a senior manager, you don't want to be doing something trivial. You need to be making a decision that's going to make a really big impact because you've got the power to do that. Whereas if you're someone really junior, maybe you can't do anything quite as significant. Maybe you might set up a car sharing scheme in your office or something like that. Although goodness knows if that's ever going to be necessary again after COVID. But it's about stretching yourself at whatever position you're in and going the extra mile from wherever you're starting out from. And importantly, that's why you get these major savings that can be measured after the course is over. So that's probably enough for me to say, but I'll be really happy to take any questions. There's loads more to say, as you can imagine, about it, but it's an exciting course to teach. It's an interesting course to write. It's very interesting to see people's reactions. I wouldn't say I've had grown men in tears, but I've certainly been able to shape people positively, I think, into a realization that something really needs to happen and it needs to happen now. So yes, I think that's probably all I'm going to say. Last slide, please. There's the details of the carbon literacy programme. Perhaps Lisa can send those around for me at the end.
Yeah, we'll make sure everybody gets those. And just a very quick question, Rina. Is this something that is open to anybody, or for the ones you're teaching, are those just for sort of council officers and members, or are they open to the public?
The ones I'm teaching and will be teaching are just for council officers and members, but the Carbon Literacy Project, on its website, they have a list of courses that are available for people to sign up to and do. There aren't very many that are for the general public, it has to be said. I think that's an area that's going to grow really fast, but it needs to get going. So there are sort of generic courses, and they're kind of marketed as for interested organisations. So it tends to be somebody from I don't know, let's say the post office or M&S or someone will go on a generic course, and then they'll go back to base and go, this is fantastic, we need to do this. And then they'll design their own in-house course if they're a big organisation based on a kind of template of what the content has to be, which is what I did for my local authorities. And that's, if organisations want to do that, they need to perhaps get in touch with the Carbon Literacy Project to talk that through.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rina. Thank you to 4 absolutely fantastic speakers. Absolutely blown away by that. And the thing that I've taken away from all of them is it's not just about the knowledge and the science of climate change. It's about influencing people's values and attitudes and their willingness to take responsibility for things, because that's what really needs to change. So we'll move on to discussion now. There's an awful lot of chat, so just bear with me. Although the questions may have been answered in the chat. I'm going to ask people to voice their question and get the speaker to one of the speakers to respond, just for the purpose of the recording. So first question for Fiona. Brent, would you like to ask your question about the cost, please, if you want to unmute, if Brent is there?
Yeah, I think Fiona's already answered it. Yeah, because I'd love to get all my teachers climate change trained. I mean, geographers and scientists probably would be okay, but these things always come with a price tag, don't they? And that's, school budgets are quite tight at the moment. We used to have a lot more money. We had citizenship education, but that's now died a death, hasn't it? So I used to coordinate citizenship education and global education, but a lot of these things were squeezed out with funding cuts. So I was just curious as to what the startup cost would be from Fiona if you wanted to go and do what she had done. What would it actually entail if I was to go back to my SLT and governors and say this is how much money this would cost?
Sorry, Brent, are you a primary head as well?
No, I'm secondary Derbyshire, yeah, schools.
Okay.
But geography.
Okay, thank you, Fiona.
Yeah, so Educate Global were really sort of helpful. We worked with them in the beginning stages when they were just setting up, and so they actually funded ours. But they've got a number of programs that are really accessible financially. So I think the bronze program literally starts at, I think it's £300, but they grow exponentially, and obviously they'll be related to size of school and number of staff. But they were really helpful in supporting us. But as I say, we were right at the beginning of that training, and I know they've moved on since then.
Sorry, Laura, did you want to come in on this particular point?
Yes, just about it cascading down. You know, if someone, you know, if Brent were to see if he could, you know, make use of such training, and then, you know, within the school and the setup, it could maybe work that way. But I'm quite horrified where I work within a school that, you know, the geography teacher will be going on about, oh yes, climate change is really important, you know, while I'm turning lights on and trying to get kids in year 7 to take responsibility for turning the screen off and the lights off as they leave a classroom because the teachers have left it all on. Oh yes, this is really important. And then I realise she's thrown a plastic carton from her lunch and her, you know, drink thing into the bin along with a wad of paper. And I'm thinking, I just despair. I absolutely despair. I could cry every day. So anyway, that's moving on. That's how it is. That's how it is. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I think some of those issues that Anna raised in her speech as well about the mismatch between what's taught and what students actually see happening in school. Fiona, do you want to respond to that?
We've had quite a few issues around that, Lisa, and I think it does come from the management of the school, and obviously then where we're sitting, you know, obviously I'm a head teacher, so I can lead on that in our school, but you know, it is a big push. We had an issue where our kitchen was out of use for over 6 months. Catering came in, they wanted to use throwaway cups and plates, and it really took a push to say, okay, if you're going to do that, then I want them to be able to be biodegradable. We are not using 6 months worth of plastic resources, and it was a real hard push to be able to do that, but they did, and they did resource them and they did pay for them, but then they came in black plastic bags to throw them away. And so then, you know, you have to be on it all the time, and it takes a lot of resource, it takes a lot of energy, but it is really important that everybody's on the same sort of bandwagon. And I guess creating an ethos is the biggest push, by creating an ethos in a school, which is probably easier in a primary school than it is in a huge secondary school. You know, and actually by my staff doing training, understanding the implications globally and locally, it has started a movement. Now, we're not perfect by any means, we've still got a long way to go, but we are addressing things as we come across them as a result of the education staff have had, parents have had, children have had.
Lovely. Okay. Nick Nutgens has got a question on eco-anxiety, which I think was for Fiona, but I'd be interested to hear all of the speakers, because, you know, the eco-anxiety is something that happens all the way from, you know, infants to adults. So Nick, would you like to ask your question?
Well, I just asked this because recently I ran a climate conversations course for students at the University of Sheffield, and I've also worked with younger people. And I found this quite hard because on the one hand, we want to communicate the urgency of the situation. On the other hand, we don't want to panic people. And so when I got the feedback from the students on our pilot course, several of them said, you were too reassuring. You didn't make clear how urgent this situation is. You should have been much more pushy. And then someone else came back, I think 2 people came back in the end and said, I've experienced serious eco-anxiety as a result of this course. And I had said to all of them, you can talk to us anytime, you know, email us, you know, you can come out with a breakout room, talk to us. They still didn't do that. So, you know, this is a big question really about, I think, how you balance what I call the good news and the bad news. And I'd love to hear how other people are handling that.
If we go Fiona, Anna, Sian, then Rina. So Fiona first.
Yeah, I guess I kind of talked a little bit about this, but we try and create hope with our young people. I mean, my children are 3 to 7, so it's about getting them on board, starting those conversations, and we do have conversations with parents. We have had 1 or 2 issues with a number of children, but we do talk about how they can make a difference and what they can do. But I do appreciate is as they get older, those questions become more significant and the anxiety does become, you know, much bigger. But we try to focus on, as you say, sort of the positives, and I can understand that we don't then create an urgency. I get that argument, but I guess we've got to weigh up, particularly in recent times, because you know, obviously mental health at the moment is a huge issue around the pandemic and global responsibility as well. You know, we are very, very mindful of it, and I don't know what the solution is, but I guess, you know, creating a positive hope and action is one of the big things we can do as a school. Anna may feel differently, I guess.
Anna, do you want to come in and talk? I don't know if that's an issue for secondary school students as well.
Yeah, it is quite an issue because I know particularly my sister Eleanor, who was going to be here, she said that when she first started talking about climate to her friends, they just kind of dismissed it and went, oh, what can we do? Nothing we do will help. So it's a kind of a disheartened response already. I'm not really sure I'm in a position to offer solutions, but I am aware that climate change is uncomfortable by nature, and I'm not sure it is possible to ever sugarcoat it. But coming from a Catholic school, I suppose it's slightly easier for us because we have got a core root message of hope. So that's slightly easier in my position, I think. But as far as, I think action is a really key way of overcoming kind of the disheartened barrier. I think if you kind of don't try and hide that it is a massive issue and it's incredibly damaging. But I think if you get people doing things, it kind of stops people from kind of shutting off. So I think that might be one way of dealing with it.
Very good. Yeah, action's very empowering. Sian, what about at university level? Do you get a lot of eco-anxiety with students, and how do you overcome that?
Well, I do tend to teach self-selecting students in the modules I teach around environmental hazards and climate related, and that I think there are issues of eco-anxiety and eco-fatigue, as Anna had outlined. It's, well, what can I do? So the way I approach it is that I don't sugarcoat it, and they have the data and the reports that come from the IPCC to analyse. But we also look at solutions and look at approaches and discuss those. And that's I think that's the way to do it, and be honest with the data, but take a solutions approach.
Okay. I can't see. Is Rina? Oh no, it's Rina. Sorry, I couldn't spot you. Rina, what about adult educate on the carbon literacy program? Is that something that you come across, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's very important. And I guess one bit of the course I didn't mention was towards the end, there's quite a big chunk on how to talk to people about climate change, which kind of covers that side of things. I think quite a lot of it's about engaging with people on things that matter to them. So be that sort of open space in the countryside or air pollution, it's quite important to connect with things that people aren't happy with and see that some of the climate solutions would address some of those other things that people are concerned about in their communities or in their lives as well. I think so. So to me, it's yes, it's about solutions. It's about other benefits from doing the climate action. It's about taking the action. It's also about giving examples of really good practice. You know, when you hear something really inspiring and exciting, something on quite a large scale that contradicts the kind of doom and gloom, you know, that's the kind of thing I would tend to put in. So, for example, you know, the most gigantic solar farm you've ever seen in China, for example, you know, really shows that they are upping their game in terms of, you know, in terms of renewable energy. Whereas most things you hear about China, people say, oh, what's the point of us doing anything? China's not doing anything. You know, you can have a counter argument. So any really positive policy statements or, you know, just really good examples of things changing for the better, I think can help with that. And I would also say that, you know, the message, I guess the strength of the message depends on your audience. I mean, if I was training senior managers, I probably would pull fewer punches because they've got some, you know, a lot more control and a lot more influence. So they perhaps need to hear it in a slightly tougher way, possibly. But I mean, anyone can feel stressed about it, I guess. So it's, yeah, that's where face-to-face I think is so much better, because you can sense, you know, the emotion, which can change very quickly in a room. But if you're doing it like this, it's quite difficult to gauge how people are feeling and to take any action to deal with that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McYates, you had your hand up. I wasn't sure if you wanted to come in on this particular point or whether it was a separate question.
Yeah, mine's more a separate question. It's regarding what I can do as a councillor. You know, it's that kind of thing. So I don't know whether, you know, one of the things reason I've come along is to see if I can find out how I can influence things, you know, for the better. And education, obviously, I'm county council, so that comes under, you know, Derbyshire County Council. So I'm basically questions about engagement from council.
Okay, well that's quite useful, because I was going to. Dawn also had a question about what local authorities can do. So maybe Dawn, if you want to ask your question as well, and then I'll ask all four speakers, you know, how can their roles be supported by local authorities or local councillors? So Dawn, if you want to ask your question first, and then we'll go to the speaker.
Yeah, hi. I mean, mine was more specific on whether the local authorities actually had a responsibility to provide and promote plant-based eating. We all know how important that now is. You know, and whether they need to actually follow that through by making it the main options within schools, universities, hospitals, rather than it being a sideline that's occasionally offered and usually not at, you know, a great quality.
Right, so there's two questions in one there. One is what support you need from the local authorities, and also maybe something about, you know, plant-based food in schools, universities, or, you know, local authority policy. So we'll do it in order again. So Fiona, if you want to go first.
I guess it's about creating an ethos in a local authority. You know, I've been banging a drum for maybe 2 or 3 years around this and about education, and it would be nice to see sort of senior leaders, etc., and higher echelons aware of the situation and making decisions. One of my teaching assistants is a local counsellor, and she's had a great amount of sort of education, and I guess we come back to education making a difference and creating an ethos whereby it touches all services. You know, I referred to catering earlier, but it's just as bad in all other services, making those decisions that actually make a difference to the resources we use and the ability of schools to be sustainable. In terms of the diet, I guess I had a conversation with catering about this, and we use Derbyshire catering services. We offer 1 day a week where children are eating a vegetarian diet completely. There's always a vegetarian option. When I talked about our school maybe going for, you know, 2 or 3 days of that or more, it was a difficult conversation because everybody has different opinions as a local authority. You know, there are pressures around farming and those conversations, but I think it's about putting the conversation on the table and about managers, senior leaders and leadership creating an ethos of this, I guess.
Okay, lovely. Anna, have you got any thoughts about, I know it's very difficult for you as a student, but maybe something about plant-based catering, but anything you think the wider community and councillors can support what secondary school students are doing?
Yeah, well, actually at school our green team has got running a petition for school caterers. It's kind of aimed at reducing plastic, reducing meat products, looking at how food is sustainably sourced for schools. So it's just kind of, if people in authority kind of supported things like this. But equally, there is some good news actually locally from our school as well. Because we've been given by the council, and I think Paul King is aware of this as well. He's been helping us with this. We've been given a window or a couple of windows in Chesterfield town centre to kind of decorate with environmental messaging. So I think having spaces like this, if councils could help give and dedicate spaces like this to green messaging, I think it can have a massive impact, because then it's not just coming from a school, for instance, or somewhere separate. It's all around. So I think that's an important part, having spaces to have this messaging.
Lovely, and that can help. Yeah, councillors can help amplify all the messages, can't they, to their wards. Sian, I know universities aren't run by local authorities, but are there things that local councillors can do?
Well, I would flip this entirely and say, what can universities do for local authorities and the local council? Because University of Derby, as the only higher education establishment in Derbyshire, does have a responsibility to its citizens for outreach and for engagement. And I would say that we need to ask the other questions. So I would ask Nick, well, what can universities do to support engagement with sustainability and climate action? I know, Peter's in the meeting here, Peter Robinson, and we've worked with Derby City Council in a series of outreach events that we did before COVID. We are working with the local diocese around biodiversity and churches and church grounds. So there's a number of things that we're doing, but we could do more. We have a lot of people, a lot of experts, a lot of students that are keen to engage with local projects. So yeah, I think it needs to be entirely approached from the other direction for universities.
I'll let Mick come back at the end, but I'll go to Rina. I mean, obviously you're in a local authority, Rina, but are there things that you think you'd like to see your colleagues doing more to support sort of sustainability?
It's quite a difficult question, really, about food and agriculture. I mean, the arena I work in is energy in general, so I'm not involved in food or food production at all. But I can see that within the course where we cover food and explain, the carbon content effectively of producing different kinds of food, that is very, very eye-opening for people to realise what a massive carbon contribution is made by beef, let's say, compared to soya products or whatever. And I think all I can say really is, I think as in the general population, there's probably a lack of understanding and awareness about how important food is in terms of climate change. So I guess, my role would be to try and raise awareness about that. I mean, I think it would be a fantastic commitment from someone who's got that authority in a local authority to have a pledge where they really consider this as an action they could take to bring their colleagues on board and consider, influencing catering, for example, in schools or in some other organisation where the council will have a contract with caterers. There's all the bureaucratic complications of contracts that exist and whether they can be changed, all that kind of thing. But, it's not rocket science, should be able to do it, but it's outside my area of expertise, food side of things. But raising awareness is really important.
Councillor Yates, I don't know if you want to come back on that at all.
Yeah, what my main concern is, I mean, personally speaking on climate change and that, I'm all in. I've got honest with you, I've taken my gas boiler out, I've gone to an air source heat pump, solar panels, solar thermal. My next move, which I'm looking at this year, is an electric car. So I'm doing as much as I can. But what I want to do is I want to try and influence people who can make real big, I mean, the individual impacts, but people can make real big impacts. Because one thing that concerned me when there was a call on the Derbyshire County Council to make a climate, emergency, they basically fluffed around it, and the leader's response was, "Oh, this warming of the climate makes it better for me growing grapes because I think you've got a vineyard," and it's sort of like, it was so dismissive that it really angered me. And what I'm looking at is the things, how I can influence people who can make, bigger changes. So one thing that's come to mind as I've been watching and listening to this today is we have, I'm a new councillor, Bolsover North, by the way. One of the things we've got is a learning course, a learning platform. Derbyshire County Council's got an online learning platform where we can go on and attend courses on all sorts of different things. And I wondered if there was some sort of course that I could encourage them, that, it's all, online based learning, that could help to, put that on and see if we can sort of like change people's perceptions and people's attitudes at the top, and sort of like, it's chipping away. That's the kind of, I wonder what I can do on that front. I mean, I've got a chance to go on certain committees, and I've targeted the pensions, because I think pensions investments is, quite, can have an impact. And, there's a lot of things that I'm looking at. I'm trying to focus on what I do to help, basically with the environment and helping us go carbon neutral.
Sorry, thank you. Oh, can you hear me? You can hear. It's okay. It's telling me I'm muted. Yeah, congratulations, by the way. I think it'll be great if you can do what you can within the authority. I've seen Dawn and Laura's hands up, but I just want to bring Rina back on your question about courses, because Rina, I'd be very interested to find out what proportion of councillors across Derbyshire have been on a carbon literacy course, or so far. Is it 10%, 50%, 1%? And what courses are available for Derbyshire County Councillors? You just answer that quickly.
I don't know exactly how many. I've probably trained about 30 or 40 councillors, but in the previous, before the election, actually before COVID, haven't been able to do anything since then. So, but there's not an even spread. It's quite sort of patchy. I've trained quite a few officers as well. Not just the carbon literacy training, but kind of shorter carbon briefings. So I can't really generalise, but I've worked with most councils in Derbyshire one way or another, and I'm looking to really ramp that up in the next year, and in Nottinghamshire as well, where I work too. So in terms of Derbyshire County Council, that's just one of the 19 authorities that I work with. But I think if the councillor would like to get in touch with Denise Ludlam at the county, or Caroline Toplis, they're probably the two best people to contact around what training is available, because I know things like that change all the time. But I know they're definitely thinking of preparing climate change training of some form right now, but I don't know exactly what that form that takes, but something is definitely happening within the county. So I suggest he gets in touch with them, or if he wants to talk to me about carbon literacy in general, I'll be very happy to do that. So
okay, thank you, Rina. And I've just seen a comment from Peter Robinson in the chat that he's thinking of running a virtually free carbon literacy course for people who are supporters of Derbyshire Climate Coalition. So maybe you can say something about that at the end, Peter, but I just want to bring Dawn in first, and then Laura, because I think they wanted to respond to some issues. So Dawn first.
I've sort of got a double question. I'll ask them both at the same time. One was for Sian. I did my PGCE training with Derby, and I was wondering whether there was some way that you could actually bring in, climate. We do so many different courses at the university. Diversity, all of the different things that we deal with. But actually the climate could be brought into so many different subjects, whether it's, history, or there's so many different ways that it could be brought in. Is there maybe some room to actually bring that into that training? Also, I'll leave it at that. Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, so this is what we're working on in terms of that UN embedding the Sustainable Development Goals and education for sustainable development, and we're working that out across the curriculum. But at the national level, those benchmark statements that I was talking about, they are all being adjusted so that they have sustainability really overtly throughout them. And the subject benchmark statements are really important, because when you validate a degree, when you make changes to it, you have to align to that subject benchmark statement. So making sustainability a lot more overt in those would ensure that across degree subjects there's an expectation that sustainability, including climate related issues, are within the degree. So that's where we're at. So it is a work in progress. As I said, that sustainability document came out in March. I'm working on the revision of one of the benchmark statements, and there are 10 revisions going on this year. So then it needs to work its way through the curriculum across all universities and across all degrees.
Sorry, could I just come back in? I think maybe I didn't word it very well. I meant more actually teaching teachers how to maybe teach the climate within their subjects.
Well, this is what I'm saying. So the course you will have taken will have been a teacher training course, and there will be a subject benchmark statement around those teacher training and education degrees, and that benchmark statements and quality assurance will have sustainability more overt and obvious within it. So it will cut across all degree courses, from education through to business and beyond.
Okay, so if I just jump in there.
Yeah, Fiona, go ahead.
Because at the moment there are a number of ways of moving into education and teaching. One of those is school direct, and some of the local schools, including Anna's actually, already deliver school direct placements for PGCEs, etc. And we have done some initial training around climate literacy and climate education. Things are changing, Dawn, and it is becoming part of the norm. I've had conversations with Sheffield Hallam, and as I say, the school direct students. I have actually delivered myself to, I think, 10 or 12 student teachers a basic literacy, climate literacy course. So it's happening, it's just not happening fast enough, unfortunately.
Thank you, Fiona. I'm not sure when you get to sleep. Right, I'm going to bring in Laura and then Brent. So Laura.
This is so fast-paced, and the discussion is moving all the time. So I'll just comment on that higher education thing, because my daughter's just finishing next weekend, I think, an international development degree in Norwich at the UEA, and I'm sort of seeing. I know there will be links to sustainability within that course. However, she's done an awful lot on sustainability, and I've been quite impressed with how it's been incorporated just through things she's said and courses she's done. So she's even produced a video about Farm Share, which is a local community growing thing. Which is,
sorry, Laura, can I just hurry you on? Can you just ask the question quickly? I've just got 3 others to come in.
One was about Barry Lewis, Derbyshire Climate Coalition. People might not know the Derbyshire Climate Coalition did a climate pledge for all the candidates in the May election. None of the Conservative councillors signed our pledge. However, then Barry Lewis, leader of Derbyshire County Council, then drew up their own pledge. And we are therefore in a position perhaps to hold them to account, maybe. And the other thing was about the planners and developers in our areas. You know, how much do they know about sustainability? You know, can we not force the issue with planners doing the carbon literacy course, and maybe try to engage developers in carbon literacy? I mean, they'll just say no, it's not our thing. But then they need to know. They need to be a part of that. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. That's it.
So maybe Rina, do you want to just quickly respond to the wider public education?
Yeah, that's quite difficult. I guess carbon literacy is relevant. Well, it's very relevant. I don't know how that would be delivered right now. I think possibly the carbon literacy project may be looking at training in different contexts. It is mainly aimed at organisational contexts, really, because that's where you can work collaboratively with others to make really big changes. So be that I guess a community organisation or a workplace is where it's really targeted. There may be other courses that are more more specific, more relevant to individuals to attend.
Peter, do you want to just come in very quickly and say about what you're planning for carbon literacy training, and then we'll move on to Brent, and that's the last question, I'm afraid. So Peter, very quickly.
I'm only thinking at the moment, not planning. I'm helping Rina run a course at the City Council next month or the month after next. But I'm thinking about how could we run it through in partnership with yourselves and Derbyshire Climate Coalition. I'd be very interested in trying to develop such a thing and run it for a day. We can try it and see how it goes. So those are the thoughts. If people are interested in that, email me or Lisa or talk to Rina about it.
That sounds brilliant, and that sounds something that councillors and the university and the can all get involved in. So we'd be very happy to support that. So I'm just conscious of time. I'm going to ask Brent. You've got one question. You got your hand up. I'll ask Brent to ask his question, and then we'll sort of we'll wrap up. So Brent.
Yeah, greenwashing. The environment's become a nice thing that people go and do a course on and then go back to normal. And we see that a lot with our councillors. I see that a lot with the outgoing leader of Nottinghamshire County Council, Kate Cutts, who is quite brazenly a climate skeptic. We've got parish councils, CEO of trusts, governors, people who are decision makers. You can do this both ways. You can go from the bottom, we can get the kids, the parents involved, but the people holding the purse strings, the people making the decisions are still not getting this. It's a climate emergency. And what they tend to do is go for, yes, I've done a climate change conference, and then they don't make the decisions. Or, we'll see what Anna was saying, decision makers will go with the big bucks, they'll go with high-speed rail, they'll go with green belt development. So we see in their actions they're not getting it, but yet they'll do the courses, but in action they won't. And I think that's the problem we need to attack. We need to go higher above into the CEOs, the governors, the trusts, the people who've got decision making, and hold them to account rather than just going, they've done a climate change emergency conference and then it has no actions. What I love about what Fiona did this morning was showed how you could do actions from individual schools, but it's obvious that she has the support of the people in her school, and we need to do that, but also we need to, how do I say it, put pressure on these people in charge, because they're greenwashing like absolutely nothing at the moment, and the pace that they're changing things isn't fast enough, especially for the younger generation. So I don't know how we go about. I spoke to Sian and Rina as well. How would we go about increasing the amount of people getting onto these courses and then following through on the actions the other side?
And also, well said, Brent. One thing, and also as well as Sian and Rina, Fiona, how do we amplify what you're doing in every primary school in Derbyshire? That's what I'd like to hear. Okay, who wants to go first on that one? Fiona?
Yeah, I mean, we tried this. To be fair, COVID has made a massive impact on sort of the momentum we had in place. Because after I went to COP at Christmas in December 2019, should I say, sorry. And as a result of that, we had built up quite a bit of momentum. I met with Barry Lewis and I met with the lead for education, and we had some conversations. We'd started talking with the education sector in Derbyshire and how we could train head teachers to deliver this in school. So there was quite a lot of momentum and conversation around it, but it kind of halted as a result of COVID, unfortunately. Literally as a school, we're now ramping up again. But as a result of going to COP, I met with Hammersmith and Fulham county councillor. He's making a great strides down there, linked with education, and they're working with Educate Global in order to get that out to all the schools. Derbyshire County Council was offered the opportunity with Educate Global to do that and to educate all of their schools. It was a long conversation. We never really got any conclusion from that, but actually you needing to educate the senior lead, you need to educate a lead in the school. That momentum is huge, and I don't know how we pick that up, but with all of us shouting, I'm sure we'll make some impact, but speed is of the essence, isn't it now? It really is. And I guess the county councillor earlier was asking what he could do. speed things up is going to be a massive thing.
Brilliant, thank you. Sian, would you like to follow?
Yeah, I think actually the virtual environment that we've worked in for the past 15 months has helped to make connections and strengthen connections both nationally and internationally. So to reinforce messages, to build that group rather than people working in maybe regionally isolated groups. We're now working internationally. We've had this global challenges event we've had the last week at University of Derby. There were people involved from all over the globe, and we wouldn't have been able to do that 18 months ago. So I think using the virtual environment is really important. And from the perspective of the students I work with, social media, absolutely critical, but using the right kinds of social media as well, depending on who we're trying to connect to and who we're trying to work with, whether it's Twitter or TikTok, just depending on that audience. I think social media is key as well and getting the messages out there.
Okay, thank you. And Rina, very quickly, I know we're over time, so.
All I can say is watch this space. The Carbon Literacy Project have launched a version of the carbon literacy training for councillors and another one for management and leadership. I think 10 days ago, there was a webinar last week, and over 100 councillors around the country have already downloaded the toolkit and are looking to deliver. So things are happening really fast all of a sudden, and I'm really excited about it. And I'm going to be training in Derby with Peter in July, and that's where it will begin, I hope. And I think by Christmas, I want to have trained half the councillors that I work with. That's my ambition.
Okay, I think we're really out of time. I know there's a lot more questions. There's some brilliant comments. Just a little plea for Anna, for petition to return it to Anna. Her email's there. We will record this. We'll write it up, and I will send it to all councillors across Derbyshire as well. But I think there's definitely a role for campaign organisations like ours on the education front there. So just to say a massive thank you to our 4 brilliant speakers. Fiona, Anna, Sian and Rina, you've all been terrific, and I wish you were in charge of everything. So I'll have to go now. I'll stop recording now, and thank you for taking the time out, and enjoy the rest of the weekend.